and welcome to KTN Prime this Wednesday evening. It's good to have you joining me. My colleague Wilson Uhuru is on assignment, so he won't be in the studio with me today, but I do have our sign language interpreter, William Silla. Now, news just coming in indicates that the Lamu governor, Issa Timami, has been arrested over the recent violence in parts of Lamu County. Timami had reportedly been called by police to record a statement over the recent killings in Witu, Mpeketoni and Kaisari, and he was detained. Now, although details are still scanty on the charges that he's likely to face, he is expected to be taken to court tomorrow. And of course, we will bring you more information as soon as we can confirm it. At least 65 people, as you probably know, have been killed in parts of Lamu in the last 3 weeks, with the government blaming the attacks on incitement by local political networks. In other news, though, court has vowed to defy a ban on their rallies that are scheduled for this weekend in Eldoret and Narok. Now, the coalition says that the rallies will proceed whether the county's leadership like it or not. And they do expect police to provide security during the rallies. But as KTN Sam Ogina reports, the Uasin Gishu County leadership has dared court to proceed.
Unmoved by the ban on their political crusades in Eldoret and Narok, CORD appeared defiant, saying the political rallies will go ahead as planned. Uasin Gishu Governor Jackson Mandago banned CORD's political rallies, taking refuge in the security situation in the country. Mandago warned the rally in 64 Stadium in Eldoret may fuel tension in the county. But rebuffing the claims, CORD scoffed at the ban, saying there are no exclusive zones in the country.
Hatujajua kama kuna hatua hali ya hatari kule Eldoret hajatangazwa, kwa hivyo sisi hatujui. Tunatangaza hapa ya kwamba tutaenda Eldoret, mwingine apende asipende. Hii mkutano itaendelea.
The people who should be dealt with right now are the two governors of Nakuru and Uasin Gishu, who long before even the police purported to cancel a permit they never issued in the first place, had said that they don't want to see CORD in those towns.
Speaking to KTN on phone, the Uasin Gishu governor maintained there will be no CORD rally in Eldoret. Mandago argues security of the country is fragile and CORD should take a back seat for a few weeks on its rallies. The governor nonetheless is to release a comprehensive statement informing the ban on CORD rally in his own backyard. But the opposition coalition says it expects full security during the rally on Friday.
We are not going to zone this country. We are not going to allow this country to be balkanized into ethnic cocoons that don't help the growth of our nation.
Police wana jukumu ya kulinda wananchi wakikutana. Kwa hivyo katiba inasema tu ati wanapewa notisi ili walinde usalama ya wananchi ambao wanakuja pale.
CORD had planned 13 rallies across the country to push government to convene a national dialogue forum. The coalition has identified security, corruption, national unity and constitutional inclusivity in public appointments, devolution and restructuring of the provincial administration as the main agenda for talks with President Uhuru Kenyatta. To buttress their push, CORD leader Raila Odinga has written to President Uhuru Kenyatta highlighting the same issues. But the quest for a rally in Eldoret has elicited mixed reactions among residents.
Kama ni mkutano, kama ni Jubilee wakikuja kama vile walipea nafasi kijana, basi hata sisi kama ODM tupewe nafasi na hakuna jambo ambayo itafanya mbaya.
Wanapokuja hapa ni kama kufungua kinola pale ambapo kilikuwa kimeanza kupona.
Jameni, mambo ya rally ya kukuja Eldoret hii, sisi kama wakaaji wa Eldoret, kabila 42 Wahindi wamekuja ndani, hata wasungu, tunasema hiyo rally hatuna nafasi nayo.
The coalition rescheduled its Kisii and Nakuru rallies to a later date. CORD had lined up 13 political forays, culminating in the Sabasaba rally at Kamkunji grounds in Nairobi on the 7th of July. The marathon political rallies to pressure government to cede into convening a national dialogue forum, but curiously, Central Region is excluded in the circuit.
Hatuwezi kusema ati kuna serikali ikae pale miaka 5 wamepewa jukumu, tungoje mpaka mwaka 2017. Upande mwingine watu wetu nazidi kukufa.
Sam Ogina, KTN.
Pende wasipende, the rallies will continue. That's what CORD is saying. And that brings us to our big Q this evening. We're asking you whether you support CORD's decision to go on with their rallies despite the ban. They've taken a very hard stance on this. Let us know what you think, and you can do that by sending an SMS to 22155. You can also tweet me at Kachungira, that's my handle, also at KTN Kenya, and of course I'll be looking at some of your feedback later on in the program, as well as giving you a poll result. Now, there does appear to be a little bit of confusion in the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy over a motion to censure Interior Cabinet Secretary Joseph Ole Lenku. Kisumu Central Member of Parliament Ken Obura filed a notice for the motion this morning before court officials retracted the censure motion in a press briefing later on. However, the ODM MP now says that the censure motion will be debated in Parliament next week. Ben Kitili reports on the pressure to remove Ole Lenku from the cabinet as the security puzzle in Lamu remains unresolved.
Interior Secretary Joseph Ole Lenku's job has been on the line for long, but especially since the Mpeketoni attacks last week. And on Wednesday, Ole Lenku's fiercest critics CORD finally tabled a notice of motion to censure the Interior Secretary. Kisumu Central MP Ken Obura, who gave the notice of motion over insecurity, wanted the issue to be discussed as soon as Thursday afternoon. However, Deputy Speaker Joyce Laboso referred him to the House Business Committee. But in an unexpected turn of events, just hours later, CORD announced the withdrawal of the censure motion. A meeting chaired by CORD co-principals Raila Odinga and Moses Wetangula announced the decision.
On reflection and wide consultations, we believe that Ole Lenku is just but a small functionary in a rotten system. And to go for him will be misapplying our energy and our brain. We want to deal with the bigger issue.
Matters would get even more confusing later in the afternoon when the Kisumu Central MP insisted that the debate on the motion will go ahead.
I was able to give the notice of motion, of course, on the floor of the House this morning. So the matter is coming next week for debate. And it will be big because we are sure that we'll be able to censure him, of course, on grounds of his total inability and incompetence.
CORD has already directed the minority leader in the National Assembly, Francis Nyanze, to write to the Speaker, Justin Muturi, to retract the motion. It is not clear if it is dissent or mere confusion.
All Kenyans, I'm sure you and I will agree that the situation in the country in terms of security is very bad.
Ole Lenku is in the eye of a storm following the insecurity incidents in Lamu areas of Mpeketoni and Witu, and the killings in Wajir and the raids in Baringo. In the latest incident, the Interior Ministry announced on their Twitter handle that 13 people had been arrested in Kiunga, suspected to have been planning to attack Witu, Kipini, Marereni and Garsen. But less than 3 hours later, police chiefs leading the security operations in Mpeketoni denied any knowledge of any arrests. Ben Kitili, KTN.
Well, here's something it will be good to make time for. Tonight on Jeff Koinange Live, Jeff speaks to former Attorney General Charles Njonjo. Now, in their conversation that was recorded earlier today, they did talk about various issues plaguing the country. We're talking about insecurity, also the politics of Saba Saba. Let's take a quick look at an excerpt from that conversation.
Do you think this Jubilee government will last?
Of course it will last. Of course it will last. It will be. Of course it will last because I don't see any opposition to Jubilee. And why should the Constitution provide 5 years? It will last 5 years. And depending on how the others behave, perhaps another 10 years.
Yeah, but if Raila stands in 2017, will you still support him?
Oh, yes.
And remember, you can watch the rest of that conversation right after this bulletin. Right now, though, let's stay with politics. 6 members of parliament from the Jubilee coalition are demanding immediate revocation of a TNA party nomination certificate awarded to Moses Kuria to contest in the Gatundu South by-election. The MPs, led by Kieni Member of Parliament Kanini Kega, said that Joyce Ngugi, the wife of the immediate former MP, the late Joseph Ngugi, won the nominations but was unfairly rigged out.
Kuria.
Political activist Moses Kuria was on Monday declared winner of the National Alliance Party for the Gatundu South by-election. Kuria is said to have garnered 7,777 votes against his closest challenger, Joyce Ngugi, who got 6,968 votes. But a section of MPs from Central Kenya, allied to Jubilee, are crying foul, claiming that party nominations were a sham and that Kuria rigged the elections.
Evidence emerging is that the person who was declared the winner during that day is not the person who won the nominations. We have evidence of doctored results, and in particular one polling station called Uhuru, where the supposed winner garnered 4,783 against the actual result of 1,338. If you get the difference, then you see who was the clear winner.
Even if you want actually to rig, you need to use some form of intelligence. Entire group will not accept to be associated with this kind of open manipulation and rigging.
In this particular instance, what happened at around 7 in Ituro polling center, Moses Kuria brought 2 Nissans of hired goons, and they chased everybody out, and they stashed ballot papers. That is actual rigging.
Thank you.
TNA Chairman Johnson Sakaja and Secretary General Onyango Olo have already handed Moses Kuria the TNA nomination certificate. But the 6 MPs who are opposed to Kuria say they will not accept the nomination process that was apparently supervised by the party's interim chairman and Secretary General.
We want the Secretary General, Olo, to come out clear and clean out of this matter, because he actually even gave the certificate to the wrong person. The certificate should be given to Joyce, Mrs. Joyce Ngugi, because she won.
You know, they are on interim basis, and therefore the parliamentary group may seriously consider taking over the running of the party.
Moses Kuria has been summoned by the Director of Public Prosecutions to appear in court over alleged hate speech that he posted on his Facebook account. This was after the Law Society of Kenya complained to the DPP. In other election-related matters, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission has distanced itself from the loss of over 4 billion shillings in the controversial procurement of the biometric voter registration kits that were used in the March 2013 polls. The electoral body was accused the Auditor General of condemning the commission unheard.
We had actually cancelled the BVR procurement, but the government came in and said we want to take over and provide the commission with the BVR, and so it became a government-to-government procurement.
A report tabled before Parliament by the Auditor General says the government and IEBC committed taxpayers to the massive loss of funds that could have been averted had all the participating agents in the tender complied with the procurement laws. Patrick Amimo, KTN.
Well, a large amount of money just came into the country. Proceeds from Kenya's debut Eurobond have been wired to the Central Bank of Kenya. This sets the stage for the rollout of infrastructure projects as well as relief to local borrowers.
The total issue of $2 billion with a weighted average interest rate of 6.6% closed yesterday, the 24th of June 2014.
That before pricing, the issue received 500% of a subscription to the tune of about $8.8 billion compared to the figure of $1.5 billion that we were looking for. During pricing, of course, we would have been tempted to take all of it, but we were prudent and took up to $2 billion.
Governor Dr. Evans Kidero against the nullification of his election will be heard tomorrow. During the hearing in court today, Kidero, through his lawyer Tom Ojenda, submitted that the petitioner, former Embakasi MP Ferdinand Waititu, had breached the law by filing an appeal to a High Court ruling 42 days after the deadline. The lawyers argued that by doing so, the Court of Appeal had no jurisdiction in hearing the appeal based on an expired time frame. Waititu's lawyers will, however, submit their response tomorrow. A Court of Appeal in May nullified Kidero's election when two judges overturned a High Court ruling that had upheld his March 4th, 2013 election. For KTN Business, and we begin with the business of maintaining roads. The government has outsourced the maintenance of Thika superhighway to firms at the cost of 1.1 billion shillings every year for the next 2 years. Philip Keitani tells us more.
2 years after the contractor handed over the Thika superhighway to the government, things have been falling apart on the 45-kilometer superhighway, with 90% of traffic lights along the highway not working and over 7 kilometers of guardrails vandalized.
We cannot be able to maintain this project through our normal operations. And that is why when it was decided that we need to bring in a contractor.
The two contractors are expected to replace all the damaged assets of the road, including guardrails and the traffic lights, repair potholes, clear litter to unblock the drainage, as well as remove dead animals and obstacles along the highway.
I don't see why somebody should, remove a small gadget in a control box of a street light, and then the whole, say 500 meters of street lights are not working.
So far, the two contractors have introduced a 24-hour patrol van that will ensure security of road assets, an ambulance to help evacuate casualties of accidents along the highway, and a breakdown service.
There has been a lot of damages, mainly on guardrails, being hit by vehicles, and I think those are the major issues that we have on this highway.
So far, the Kenya National Highways Authority has spent in excess of 50 million shillings in the maintenance and repair of vandalized items on Thika Superhighway, making it the most expensive road to maintain in the history of Kenya. It is now 2 years since the contractor of Thika Superhighway handed over the road to the government, and now the government admits that the maintenance of the road has become a tall order due to the high cases of vandalism, and now they have decided to get a private contractor to maintain the road. Philip Keitani, KTN, from Thika Superhighway.
Well, from Kenya's most expensive road, let's take to the skies. National carrier Kenya Airways has reversed its full-year loss by 55.1% in its full financial year ended March 2014. During the period, KQ posted 4.8 billion shillings loss, a marked improvement from the 10.82 billion shillings loss that the airline realized the previous year. Michael Karanja has the rest of that report.
2013 had been a challenging year in global aviation. With shrinking spend in travel coupled with unstable prices, airlines have been in tough operating space. The story has not been different for Kenya Airways. But for the national carrier, the period saw marked improvement in its performance, cutting its huge 10.82 billion shilling loss to 3.3 billion shillings in losses after tax for the period ended March 2014. The performance was built on increased turnover, which was up 7.2% to 106 billion shillings, as well as 2.5% reduction in operating costs to 75 billion shillings.
Coming in with an improvement at 2.7 compared to 9 billion last year, a 70% improvement, we believe is a fantastic performance.
In the wake of increased competition, KQ has had to rationalize its costs to improve its performance. The airline has also employed a hedging policy on fuel, with 1.5 billion shillings in savings realized during the year. During the period, the airline also grew its fleet to 45 planes, including 2 cargo freighters. It is these new acquisitions, as well as opening up of new routes, that KQ is banking on to return it to a profitable path.
And that, combined with the work that's going on at the airport, gives us that optimism that we'll be able to give back to customers a good product and a good service.
Foreseeable challenges for the airline remain as always unstable oil prices, slowdown in Asia, not to mention the rising cases of insecurity that have led to numerous travel advisories on Kenya. For Naikuni, this is perhaps his last investor briefings as he plans for retirement at the end of November. Replacing him will be Mbuvi Ngunze, KQ's chief operating officer, whose task will be to build on the airline's Project Mawingu.
It's still early days. I am still internalizing it. I have to, with the board and chairman and Titus, start planning the succession. Then I will be able to have a much more substantive statement. It's a pleasure to be invited to join the board, and I look forward to working with the team to make sure that we drive KQ further.
Michael Karanja, KTN Business.
And German leisure airliner Condor has added its 4th flight this summer, making it the most frequent charter airline to fly into Mombasa, a significant boost to the Kenyan tourism industry that's currently heading south. Condor now flies 4 times a week on Mondays, Wednesdays, Friday and Saturday, a clear indication that the German tourism market has chosen to ignore negative publicity about the coast. According to Kenya Association of Hotel Keepers and Caterers Coast Branch Chief Executive Officer Sam Ikwaye, government should give necessary support to Condor to enable it increase its flight rotation into Mombasa. The tourism sector in the country is today struggling to attract new markets as part of its diversification efforts. Now let's take a look at how the financial markets performed today. Proceeds from Kenya's debut Eurobond have been wired to the Central Bank of Kenya, as we said earlier, and this does set the stage for the rollout of infrastructure projects as well as relief to local borrowers. Here's Adelaide Changole to explain that.
After more than 6 years and 3 false starts, Kenya has finally listed the long-awaited $2 billion debut sovereign bond, the largest ever placement by a first-time African issuer.
The total issue of $2 billion with a weighted average interest rate of 6.6% closed yesterday, the 24th of June 2014.
The issue received 500% oversubscription to the tune of about $8.8 billion compared to the figure of $1.5 billion that we were looking for.
The bond will be split into a 5-year, $500 million tranche that will attract an interest rate of 5.875% and a $1.5 billion 10-year tranche attracting an interest rate of 6.875%. This is significantly lower than the 8.5% yield on the Ghanaian 10-year bond, something President Uhuru says is a sign of confidence in Kenya's economy.
The macroeconomic indicators demonstrate that the underlying economic fundamentals of our country remain sound and indeed will continue to strengthen with coherent economic strategy that we are now implementing.
The Eurobond, which will now be the benchmark for Kenyan firms seeking funds from international markets, will be used to retire the $600 million syndicated loan, finance infrastructure projects, and plug the 342 billion shilling budget deficit. The funds will also reduce government appetite for local funds, leading to lower interest rates and providing much-needed credit to private sector players.
Our plan to access international capital markets, we will reduce our recourse to domestic borrowing. Consequently, the government will review downward domestic borrowing plans for the next financial year.
But the government is going even further as it seeks to reduce lending rates to below 10%. For starters, it is promoting full disclosure of bank charges through the annual percentage rate pricing mechanism to help borrowers make informed decisions. The rate requires banks to disclose all costs associated with the loan, including the repayment schedule, the interest rate, bank charges, and fees. Banks will also be required to use the Kenya Bank's reference rate that will be set by the central bank. The rate will be computed as an average of the central bank rate and the 91-day treasury bill rate, with banks being allowed to add a premium based on the bank's cost of doing business and the borrower's credit profile. And as the country looks forward to enjoying the fruits of the bond, the government is already planning to tap the international market with other foreign-denominated bonds.
We are going to diversify. Maybe not necessarily the Eurobond. We may look at other products like the the Sukuk bond, diaspora bond, or other denominations.
$2 billion sovereign bond has finally been listed and the money deposited into Kenyan accounts ready to fund those crucial infrastructure projects. But all eyes will be on the government to see how well they utilize these funds to avail much needed services to Kenyan people. Adelaide Changole, KTN Business.